Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest instance in the Open Source Developers at Google Speaker Series. Our speaker series is designed to help the public understand more about what some of the open sourcers here at Google are doing in their time here at Google. And I am pleased this evening to introduce Charles Chen and TV Raman, both of whom share an office here and work on accessibility issues. And these gentlemen tonight will be discussing enhancing Web 2.0 accessibility via AccessJacks. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for coming, everyone. It's a Monday evening. We really appreciate your showing up and taking the time to come for this talk. So my role in this talk will be to talk as little as possible and allow Charles to talk. So that's my challenge. And at the end, you can grade me on how well I do. And Charles' challenge, of course, will be to talk without pausing so that I don't get a chance to cut in. So what we'll talk about is injecting accessibility and usability into Web 2.0 applications. The background for this work is that, as you know, if you take a look at the kinds of web application Google builds, we and other Web 2.0 developers have been, for the last few years, pushing the envelope on what can be done in the web browser. And the result has been extremely dynamic, highly interactive HTML interfaces that work very well, but in the past have also presented significant challenges to users with special needs. So for instance, if you cannot see and you're using a screen reader or a talking browser, a lot of the AJAX applications caused no end of pain. We've been looking at this problem for the last 2 years or so, and we've basically gone down the route of asking how can we use the same AJAX technologies to enhance the usability of Web 2.0 applications for somebody who cannot see. The background for this work is something which is now in sort of W3C last call or getting ready to W3C last call, called W3C ARIA, which is Accessible Rich Internet Applications. It's a spec, but the spec can be sort of summarized in half a dozen lines. If you think of HTML and JavaScript as the assembly language of the web, it's low-level assembly language. You're doing spans and divs and attaching event handlers and styling it. If you think of that as the assembly language, the way to conceptualize ARIA is that it's a couple of additional opcodes in that assembly language that helps adaptive technologies like screen readers and self-voicing browsers discover, introspect, reflect, and then provide the right feedback for the HTML widgets. That's a lot of words. Basically, in simple terms, it allows a screen reader to know that a menu is a menu and then treat it as such when you interact with it. What Charles and I have been building is, if you have this assembly language, now when you write your AJAX app, you typically use a toolkit. You typically use Dojo or any other JavaScript library that you like, or in the case of Google, you might use GWT. And those things give you higher level design patterns to do your GUIs nicely. What we have created is an open source library that we call AccessJacks that allows you to do the same for good auditory user interfaces. All of the output that you will hear is actually produced by the screen reader, so we don't do the talking. We provide the web developer the right JavaScript calls to make the adaptive technology talk. For today's talk from here, when Charles takes over, he will show you everything running on a Mac. He is using Firefox, which is Charles's project. He started that as a student, and here at Google, he is doing it on his 20% time. We are doing the demos, we are doing all of this today on the Mac because it's one of the best TTS engines that you can find out there today. So for that, I will hand it off to Charles. And Charles, from here on, you're supposed to prevent me from talking.
OK. Thanks, Raman. So now I'd just like to add in a few other things about the AccessJacks library. One of the key benefits of this library is that not only is it something that a web developer can use to improve their web page and enhance their usability, it's also something that a hacker, someone who's just really into coding, into doing things, open source developers, such as all of us here, we can use this library and apply it to websites that aren't using it themselves. Because at the end of the day, this is just some JavaScript. And the JavaScript can be inserted into a web page through various mechanisms. For example, bookmarklets or grease monkey. And so that's one of the key benefits here is that even if the web developer, even if you don't own the website, you can still enhance the usability and accessibility of that website using AccessJacks. And so with that, I'm going to show you all a demo, and I believe that's the best way to show some of the benefits that you can get from using AccessJacks. Now, before we use it, let's look at before and after scenario. So I'm going to do the before case first, and I am going to do a search for flowers on everyone's favorite search engine. Okay, so this brought up a page of results for flowers, and you'll see that we have results, we have sponsored links, we have related searches, and you have many pages of results that you can go to. Now, if you're trying to browse this with a screen reader and get through it, it's rather painful because although we have well-structured content, we have headings and section tags and all of that, it's still not that easy to navigate. Because to go through the results, what you have to do is you have to say, take me to the next heading or the first heading. So it's going to take you here to this first result. And all you will hear at this point is you will hear the title text. You won't hear any of the snippet content. So to determine whether or not this result is something that you want to click on, you're going to have to tell your screen reader to read the next bit. And when it reads the next bit, then you're going to hear the snippet. Now, if this is the link that you wish to click on, now you have to tell your screen reader to go to the previous heading to get back up to the link so that you can click it. And you just repeat this process until you go through all the results. If you need to go to the next page, then it's going to take several tabs. So you'll be tabbing for quite a bit here to get to the next link. And if you're a Power Screen Reader user, Power Google user, you probably know of a few shortcuts that can shorten this process. But still, it's relatively painful. And then you also run into the problem of trying to group related items. So if you, say, brought up all the links on this page, and you got all the URLs, but then how do you differentiate between the sponsored links versus the results? I mean, they're all links to other pages here. So that sort of grouping, visually you look at it and it's obvious. All the sponsored links are to the side. All the results are centered to the left. But if you can't see and you're just trying to determine that, it becomes a little bit difficult. So let's see. Let's step back and think about what the eye is doing for you when you look at this page. So the eye is helping you group things, and it's allowing you to quickly scan the page and just look at the parts that you want to look at that are important to the task at hand. And so if the task at hand is that you want to do some research about flowers, then you want to look at the results. You'll see a Wikipedia link. You can click on that. If, on the other hand, the task that you're trying to accomplish is you want to order some flowers, then you probably want to look at the sponsored links to the right-hand side so you can order some. And so with that in mind, you can think of a busy page with a lot of content as a page with multiple lists of related items. And you should be able to switch between the lists depending on what you're trying to do, and then go through the items in each of the lists. And that is what AccessJacks, one of the things that AccessJacks can provide. So I'm going to enable AccessJacks and repeat the same query.
You muted?
No, hang on, I'm just loading it.
So,
Plants, gift basket delivery, 1-800-Flowers.com. Welcome to 1-800-Flowers.com, the world's one online florist. Be sure to visit our summer garden.
So notice how it started speaking both the title and the snippet, and you heard both of those things together. Now, instead of trying to hunt around for the next result, I can simply press a key and get there. So now I'm going to go.
Send flowers, plants, and gift baskets. Flower delivery from.
And I can keep doing this.
Flower, create your same day, send fresh flowers.
And now you'll notice that I am at the bottom of the page of results. Now remember, earlier I had mentioned that if you want to try to get to the next page, you'd have to tab multiple times. But if you think about the task at hand, what you're really trying to do when you go to the next page is you're just trying to get the next result. So logically, if you press the same button to go next, then when you hit next at this point, it should just take you to the first result on the next page and just do it for you. And that's what it will do.
Flickr, flowers, Flickr is almost.
So notice how when the next page loaded, it immediately spoke the first result. So as an end user, your mental model now isn't about, well, a result page has 10 results on it, and now that I'm on the 10th result, I need to hunt for the next page link, and I need to click that, and then I need to find the first result. Your mental model becomes simplified, and you just need to think, well, I want to get the next result. You press the key for a next result, and you hear it, and it's just right there. Now, I'd mentioned that sometimes you might want other categories, for example, sponsored links, if you're trying to order flowers. So I'm going to show you going through the different categories and traversing within a category.
Sponsored links. Related searches. Alternate search categories. Results. Sponsored links.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the sponsored links on this page.
City of flowers, flowers and gifts for every hop, same day, fine garden, flowers at fresh.
And you'll see I can do the same sort of navigation with that.
Are you doing tabbing?
No, I'm not doing tabbing. That's a very good question. You know, with tabbing, you're jumping through all the focusable elements, and whereas with this, what you're doing is you're going through logical chunks.
So he's using cursor keys. So we're basically using the 4 cursor keys to do the navigation.
Yeah, we're using the arrow keys. So. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Keyboard access, yes.
So now one of the challenges is, you know, whether you're tabbing or doing this, when you reach the end of a page, to know that you've reached the end and that the next time you do this action, you've wrapped around to the top. Because if you're not sure about where you are on the page, then you could end up just looping forever. So you'll notice that as I was doing this, it was playing this little tick sound. So that's an ear con. And so we have different ear cons depending on whether you're traversing through items, traversing through lists, or if you've circled around. So I'm going to circle around here and you'll hear it.
Flower, leaf, flowers by city of flowers, flower.
Notice that it made a blip sound that was different from the regular ticks. The other thing that you'll notice is that there's an enlargement of what you're currently viewing. So
related searches, alternate search cat results. Emily Simon, flat.
So for example, I've brought up this search result, and if I wanted to magnify it, I can just press plus and I can make it larger. So you'll see that this is getting larger. But this is different from using a traditional magnifier tool because unlike a magnifier which enlarges the entire screen and can be a problem sometimes because you lose context of where you are overall relative to the rest of the page, when you do this, you're only enlarging the thing that you're interested in. And so you still have a sense of approximately where you are. Yes?
Does that also work in IE?
So right now, this will work in any browser that is ARIA aware and works with ARIA. So currently, IE doesn't support ARIA yet, but IE 8 is working on it. 8. So, yes. OK. So with that, you've seen a basic demonstration of what AccessJacks can do to enhance navigation of a complex web page. And you're probably thinking, OK, this is really cool. How can I do this for my web page? Or how can I do this for any web page that I'm interested in enhancing? And that's what the rest of today's talk will be about. So with that, let's go ahead and start. By the way, all of this stuff, all of this information is available online on the AccessJacks homepage and on the tutorials. So I am going to go to the tutorial right now. So for tonight, what we'll be doing is we'll be applying AccessJacks to Google product search. And we'll go through the whole thing from start to finish and show you just how you can do it on your own for any website. Now, first off, you need to do a little bit of setup on your machine to get all the parts that you need to build this. So as I had mentioned earlier, this technology relies on WAY ARIA. And currently, a browser that supports WAY ARIA, the best is Firefox 3. So I highly recommend getting a Firefox 3 Portable Edition because this is a sandboxed version of Firefox that you can download, unzip, develop on. And it's completely separate from your default browsing profile, so it won't change any of your settings or mess anything up. There are also, no, Safari doesn't support it yet. WebKit is also working on it, but they don't have it just yet.
Today, just Firefox.
For today,
Yes.
yes. But all the other ones are working on it. So Opera, IE, and WebKit all have it in development. There are also several helpful extensions. So one of them is GreaseMonkey. Remember I had mentioned earlier that what you're running with AccessJacks is you're just running JavaScript, and they can be inserted in a variety of ways. GreaseMonkey happens to be a very easy delivery mechanism because it will automatically load the script for you when the page loads. So it's a very helpful way of developing this. The other thing that's nice here is that, okay, so is everyone here pretty much familiar with XPath, or at least know of it somewhat? Okay, cool. So if you want extra help with XPath, then you can always Google for XPath tutorial, and there are several excellent ones that you can find that way. But okay, that's nice. So there's a tool for Firefox called XPather, and this allows you to use the DOM inspector so that when you click on an element on the page, it will then tell you what the XPath to that element is. So you can very quickly discover what all the XPaths are without doing too much work. There's also something called Event Spy. We won't be using it tonight, but it's very helpful for dealing with rich AJAX applications because it lets you know what the style changes are and which events are coming from which elements. And that's a very useful thing to watch for. And then there's Firebox, because it's probably nice to get some spoken feedback just to hear the results of your work.
And so the advantage of prototyping with Firebox is that the way we've done the library, we've made sure that the speech feedback you produce will work consistently across all the screen readers that support ARIA. But Firebox basically gives you an end-to-end open source solution that you can prototype with. And so rather than doing the write once and debug under every browser, carried forth to write once and then debug on every browser with every screen reader, this gives you a way to write and debug against a open source free solution that talks, and then release it into the wild with the hope that it actually works with the rest of the screen readers.
The other thing that's nice to help speed up development is, see, when you're usually working with GreaseMonkey, you end up editing it inline, and you have to save it, and then you close that, and you reload, and that's sort of a pain. So the easiest way of doing it is to actually inject your script through a local web server. And so there are several self-contained web servers where you just have to unzip it and run. On Windows, the one that we recommend is running server to go, because that's just really easy. You unzip it, and it's there for your local machine. I'm on a Mac right now, so I'm actually running something called MAMP, MAMP. It works the exact same way. And then after you've gotten that, you're all set up. All you need to do is download a few simple skeleton files. And these skeleton files form the basis for, right? So you just replace the variables there with your content, and you can begin. And so with that, let's go ahead and start AccessJacksing Google product search. Okay. So I've brought up product search. I'm going to make sure I turn off some stuff here. And I should,
The text field is empty.
I'm going to mute that so I can talk. Now, before we begin AccessJacksing product search, let's take a moment and think about what the correct interaction model would be. So let's do a search inside product search, and let's try to find something. Okay, so I've done a search for Google inside Google product search, and I've come up with some products, and you'll see that there's an image, there's a title for the product. If it's a book, it says who the authors are. It has a price range, where you can buy it from, and then a description and some other information, such as whether or not you can use your Google Checkout account. And that's pretty much the way the whole page is. You have that, and at the bottom you have some ways to do query refinement. But mostly it's about getting through these results. So let's see how we can do that. I'm going to start up DOM inspector and then use XPather to find the appropriate XPaths.
So as he brings that up, what we are essentially doing is, so there's two steps, right? Finding out what to speak and then how to speak it. The what to speak, basically you are going through the HTML and figuring out the right bits. When he showed you the demo, we showed you this thing as, think of it as these logical collections of categories of things that you move through. From a programmer's point of view, think of it as trails that you walk through the DOM. And so what he's going to show you is how you define those trails and then how you navigate them programmatically.
So first off, just to verify that we have our development environment set up correctly, you'll notice that on the skeleton file, the part that you will be editing is inside this initialization function. And there are two key parts here. The first part says, put the CNR XML here. I'll get into that a little shortly, which is this is basically an XML string that defines what the groupings are. And then there's this line here that says access scale loaded and initialized. So when you load, if your environment is set up, when you first load it, you'll get this message that says it's been loaded, it's initialized, and it's working. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and select the first result. It's going to look a little bit better if I minimize this and show it side by side. Hang on.
So this is the part where you sort of pick up what to speak.
Okay, so I've clicked on the content section of that result, and now DOM Inspector is showing me something. So I'm going to look at it. Oh, by the way, on Windows, this actually draws a little red rectangle around what you just clicked on. On the Mac, it doesn't seem to do that. It seems to be a Firefox issue. But it's still really easy to find out where you are, because you can look at the DOM node inside DOM Inspector, and it's pretty obvious that you're where you are. Because if you go to the JavaScript object, you can go to the text content, and you'll see where you are. Yeah, you can use Firebug as well. Okay. But the XPather tool that I'm showing, that is only for DOM Inspector, which is why I'm using that. But you can, as you can see here from the text content, you have Google Talking by Brian Baskin, etc., and that's where you are. So from that, if you just click on the element in the DOM tree, and if you click on Evaluate here, you'll get the XPath expression generated for you. And so this one tells you, OK, so this is your XPath expression. And that's just given to you by the tool. Now, next, you'll want to find out this expression only selects one of the nodes for you. And really what you want is you want to select all of the results. And so if you just come back here, you can go ahead and click on the next result and see what XPath you get there. And that should make it very apparent what the correct expression is.
For those who know XPath, they further refine that instead of having Firefox supply the XPath. Like if I would like to apply predicates, filter certain nodes.
Sure, you can do that.
I could do it by hand.
Yes, of course, you can do it by hand. I'm just showing a way where even people who aren't really that sophisticated in terms of their development, and they just have Firefox, they can basically just use these tools and click through it. And even if they don't understand XPath that well, they can still write a very good CNR file that still works.
In general, if you know XPath after using these tools, you would probably go in and optimize them by hand.
Yes.
I mean, I write these things by hand. I mean, I don't use all these wimpy tools.
Yeah.
I do it by hand.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's much right.
Yeah.
And it's much
more power to us.
Yes. But for everyone else, there are these tools. So now I've clicked on the second one, and I'm going to evaluate that. So notice the previous one had TR2 here. So if I evaluate that now, big surprise, it's changed to TR3. So a very easy way then to get all the nodes is I just put a star here, and I'll select everything.
1 is a prime, 2 is a prime, 3 is a prime, everything's a prime.
And this is almost correct, right? It's giving me all the results. It is giving me one extra header row here about showing all the items and all of that. But if I go back here and I look at my DOM, I'll notice that, hey, all of these rows, they don't have class names, but this one header does. So I'll make a very minor change here and just exclude things that have a class name.
So in this case, you have to manually.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So once I do that, and you'll see that I've now filtered it down to just 10 results on the page that I want. And so this is the XPath that I'm going to use. Now, if I can, now, while I bring up my development environment. Okay, so the place that you'll be adding this to is a CNR file. CNR stands for Content Navigation Rule, and it's basically just a bunch of XML text that defines where the items are and how you can navigate them, the keys. So at top level, you have a CNR element, and the next and previous tell you the keys that you use to go to the next and previous list. And for each of the lists inside the CNR, you also have next and previous telling you how to go through the items in that list. And then you have the item, and that's where you put the XPath. And there are a few other things that you can do with this. They're all documented in the tutorial. There's a reference for what the elements are and what they do. But you can do a couple of other things, such as you can add triggers so that when you reach the end of a list, it will automatically click on that element for you. And you can add targets where if you just type that hotkey, it will automatically click on that target for you. Yes?
I notice your next and previous and then that little character J, is that like VI?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is like VI. The idea is that
You try to make it like VI, right?
yes, this way you can do the whole thing without ever taking your hand off the home row. So that's sort of an efficiency thing. But again, these keys can be whatever you want to define. So as a web developer, if another set of keys makes more sense to you, then you can use those as well.
And so whatever keys you define here, that actually will end up getting generated as online help. So your end user will basically be able to hit a question mark and hear all the key bindings. In general, we try to make the arrow keys sort of navigate among categories and within a category. And I'm a Unix user. I hate taking my hands off the home row. So 8JKL, obviously, yes, VI.
So what I've done now is, because we're doing something that's fairly simple, I've removed the rest of the CNR file because we don't need it. And this is what you get. So this one is saying that, actually I don't even need the next and previous keys here because we're not going anywhere else. But for within the list item, you can go to the next and previous item, and here's the XPath that you'll use to fetch those results. Now I'm going to go ahead and embed this in the JavaScript file. To make it easier, rather than trying to reformat this manually, I can simply copy and paste this into a tool that we have. Okay, so this has given me a copy and paste friendly JavaScript string. And now I am going to put it into that JavaScript skeleton file that I've been using. Okay. And now I don't need this debug statement, so I'm going to take that out. I'm going to save it. And now when I reload the product page, it should do the right thing. So let's watch what happens. Okay. And it helps to turn on Grease Monkey when you're actually going to do this. Okay, didn't. Okay. So now this is loaded, and I'm going to try going through the items. So we had set J to go to the next item. Let's see what happens here.
http://books.google.com/books question it equals tbr.agwc ampersand print sec equals front cover ampersand img equals 1 ampersand zoom equals 1 Google talking by Brian Baskin, Joshua Brashers, Johnny Long, computers, Sinris, Elsevier Science, distributor %C2% A0, 2007, paperback, 257 pages nationwide and around the world. Instant messaging use is growing, with more than 7 billion instant messages being sent every day worldwide, according to IDC. Comscore Media accepts Google Checkout $4 to $284 at 81 stores. Compare %C2% A0 prices.
Okay, so that
Key still works, right?
yeah, the arrow key still works.
Yes, yeah, that's why it's, if you,
That's why I put right. If you look at the
yeah, so it's got both bindings there in the file.
if you look at this file here, I'm saying I'm binding both down and J and, so I can bind whatever keys I want. I could put Z if I want to do that. I can do whatever I want here. So you listen to that, and the good news is we didn't have to do too much work. We just clicked on a few tools, got an XPath, pasted it in, and we got something that works. I can go to the next previous item. I can do all of that. The bad news is, that utterance isn't exactly ideal. So let's look at what it did earlier here. It went ahead and it started, first it tried to read this image URL, which is kind of annoying because you probably don't want to hear that very long image URL string at the beginning. It got to this title, which is good, but then after that, it went ahead and it started reading this description. Whereas when you're shopping, you probably want to hear the prices first. And then it went to that, and it gave you the Google Checkout availability, which is nice, but still, it put the prices at the end. So what you really want is you want to hear the title, you want to hear the prices to see if it's something reasonable, and if it is, then you want to continue listening on to the description to verify that it is what you think it is based on the title. And at the end, you want to hear some additional information like whether or not you can use your Google Checkout account. So exactly. So this is where we get into the next part. It's how do you take text from this and then reformat it into something that's more pleasant, more appropriate for an oral interface. Because for a visual interface, this is fine because the human eye can scan it and jump to the correct part of it at the right time. But when you're listening to it, it's just going through it in DOM order, and that's that may or may not be the most pleasant experience. There are also a few other issues here. You'll notice that we did this very simply, so we didn't enable going to the next page, for example. So that's still something that needs to be done. And finally, notice that when it started up, it didn't actually read the first item. I had to hit J to get it to start. So we're going to fix all of that in the next iteration here.
Could I embed questions like, would you like to continue? Because sometimes
Sure.
I like to do
Sure.
that.
Sure. It's at the end of the day, it's JavaScript, so you can
Program
write
it.
whatever you
Is there
can.
a special key that I could
Yeah.
customize and
Absolutely.
go to continue?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So basically, the way to think about CNR is the XPaths tell you what collections of nodes. The arrow keys tell you how to walk through them. And then it's if you use design patterns language, right, it's a visitor pattern. The default action when you visit something is to speak its contents. But then you can customize that, and that's what Charles is going to show you, by providing your own formatter function. And then you can sort of speak it the way you want. And you get to do this as the web developer or the person enhancing somebody else's web application by focusing on the quality of the auditory output without worrying about how different screen readers are then going to use it. Because by the fact that the screen readers implement ARIA, which is sort of this base level standard, you sort of get this common behavior across all the tools. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to do was get the next and previous page links in there. So let's find the XPath for that. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the second page because then it has both the next and previous arrows. You can look at that. Oops. Okay, so I found the previous page link. It's this one. And one easy way to identify it is if I look at the image, and I'll see that that's what its source is. It's that. I can do the same thing and find the next page link. Okay, so now I'm on the next page link. And you'll notice that its image says nav next, whereas the previous one had the Google image. So that's one very easy way to differentiate between the two links. And so I can write an XPath for that. And then the other thing that I need to do is I need to add a target so that when the user presses enter on the current result, that they get taken there directly. And so you'll notice that the link that you'll be using is the link that's the first link on the element with the class content. So that's how you get the link. And all of these targets, by the way, are relative to the node that you're currently on. So you can specify it such that you write one XPath because it's all structured the same, that you then get it for all of the items. So you don't have to do it individually. And so this, whoops, sorry, wrong CNR file. Okay, and so this is the CNR file that we get. And so, so this is the CNR file from before. And after we add in all of that, this is what we get. So you'll notice that we have the same CNR for going through the results, but we've added a few things. So we've added that next and previous link, and they're called the triggers list tail and list head. And we've also added the ability to click on the current item just by pressing enter. So it's go to result. And so the way that list tail and list head work is that if you're on the very last item in the list and you try to go to the next item, then you've reached the tail of the list, so it should take that action. And the same thing with list head, which is if you're on the first item of a list and you try to go to the previous item before that and go backwards, then you're at the list head and it should execute that action. And with something that's just a target where you just have a hotkey, then it means that whenever you press that hotkey, that action should happen. In this case, the actions by default is to click on whatever the target is. So this is what's causing it to click on the next previous link, click on enter. So let's go ahead and let's change our CNR to use this newer version. So again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm putting it into the tool, and it will generate a CNR for me, CNR string for me. Yeah, it added the quotes, it did the formatting, it made sure that I did it with 80 characters. So, yeah, exactly. So yeah, copy and paste programming. But it works in this case, and so this tool is also part of the tutorial, and we have it online, so anyone can go ahead and use it. So let's go ahead and let's try reloading this now with these changes. We still haven't reformatted the speech, but we've added these features so that you go to the next previous page, you can activate an element, and let's see how this looks like. Okay. Oops.
Base.Google hosted.
Yeah, it works better if I turn on the sound and unmute. So first I'm going to see if I can activate this link and go to it. And so I just pressed enter, and there I go. So it worked. Okay. Now let's see what happens when I reach the last result on this page.
http://
And so it took me to the first result on the next page.
http://
Now if I try to go to the previous page, let's see what happens. And indeed it went to the previous page. So cool, the new CNR has improved what we can do on this page, but we still need to fix that audio and make it sound better. So let's look at how we can accomplish that. So as I mentioned before, the order in which it was reading things isn't very pleasant, because what you really want to hear is you want to hear the title, the price, the description, and then some other information, such as where you can buy it and whether or not you can use Google Checkout. And so the solution to doing that is to write your own function that will generate a formatted string and that will then speak it using the AccessJacks library. And so here's the code for doing that. You'll see that this code has several parts where all it's doing is it's just fetching the content. So it's fetching the title, the description, the price, the seller, the ratings, and whether or not you can use checkout there. And then it's taking all of that information, it's reconstructing it so that you get the title first, followed by the price, followed by a description, the seller, the ratings for that seller, and then checkout information. So it's restructured that thing into a message. It's using the lens library to create that enlargement effect. It's scrolling you to the result, and then at the end, it's speaking that message that you had generated using the AccessJacks library. And again, the AccessJacks library will then set all the appropriate way aria properties, which then trigger the screen reader into saying the correct thing to the user. It depends on your text-to-speech engine and your screen reader, so that varies. Generally, if you want to insert pauses, use a period.
Yeah, spaces will not cause the TTS engines in general to introduce a pause. They typically treat multiple spaces as a single space. So that would not, yeah.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just load up the final version that uses this, and I'll step through what we did there and what the changes were. Okay, so this is the same thing as the skeleton file, but there have been a few changes. So one of the key things that you'll notice is that now we have all of these get functions. So we have get title, get description, and what these things are using is they're just using XPath to find the node with that content, and then it's returning that node's text content. So it's fairly standard and straightforward. And here's the function that I had shown earlier for speaking the result. So this is a function that's reconstructing it and then passing that message into a library and using a library to speak.
So earlier the default visit action was to just take all of that content and speak it. Now you basically use the custom formatter that you wrote and you get the output you want.
And you'll notice that we've also added a set timeout here at the front. So this means that when it loads, it's going to try to speak the first result. And that will help because now the user will know when the page is loaded and it's ready to go. So let's go ahead and run this version of it. So yet another reason why I like having a local web server and using GreaseMonkey is that it's very easy to just try something out and choose a different file. For example, right now I can switch from the skeleton file that I was working with before to this finished version with just by commenting out a line and uncommenting another. Okay, so that just switched the file for me. And now, if I reload, it should give me the correct one. So let's try this.
$2 to $284 by Brian Baskin, Joshua Brashers, Johnny Long, Computers, Sinris, Elsevier Science, Distributor %C2% A0, 2007, paperback, 257 pages nationwide and around the world. Instant messaging uses
And if I go to another one.
http://books.google.com/books question it equals tt7lgaacaaaj ampersand prints http://
Okay, sorry.
http://base.googlehosted.com/base_media question q equals http://ak.by.com/db_assets/prod_image/659/20410165.jpg size equals 2 dhm equals 27968 and 1 hl equals on Google it revisited add to shopping list accepts Google checkout 80.
Okay, so this is what you get when you don't completely reload the page. As you'll see, it was running the previous script. So let's reload this properly here.
Marvels of browser
page info.
caching.
Yeah. So it's very important that you're loading the right scripts. Otherwise, you get results that you don't really want.
Google Talking, $4 to $284. By Brian Baskin, Joshua Brashers, Johnny Long, Computers, Sinris, Elsevier Science, Distributor %C2% A0, 2007. Paperback, 257 pages.
So as you can see, now it's reformatted. It stopped speaking the image at the beginning. It's now reading the title, the price, the description, exactly the way that we want it to. And if I keep going next, I can go to the next page and
http: Biography, The Google Boys, DVD, $14.99. DVD documentary. Buy this at Circuit City. 4,054%, C2% A0 sellers %C2% A0 ratings averages out to 3.5 stars.
see, it even told me how many stars there were out of that, which is kind of nice. So with that, we've just a short amount of time, less than an hour, we've AccessJacks the Google products search page.
So the power of all of this, as Charles said at the beginning, is that it isn't limited to the web developer who owns a particular site. In fact, even if you're doing it to your own site, sort of doing this in some sense external to that thing via GreaseMonkey, doing it with a script, allows you to experiment very rapidly and figure out what actually works, and then go and do it on your site. If you don't own that site, you are just someone who's got an hour of hacking time to spare and want to help a friend of yours who cannot see, this is a very nice way for you to go in there and do that. And then finally, if you are, you can also write something like this if you are a screen reader vendor or an open source screen reader creator. The nice thing is they are not tying this to any specific adaptive technology. It's sort of using some bits that are implemented commonly across the various screen readers. Firefox 3 is implementing it, and as Charles said, the other browsers are going to follow very soon. So it sort of gives you a very good way of leveraging the little time that you have to pay attention to accessibility. So accessibility has been a big success in the last few years in terms of getting people's awareness. Right? People are now aware that there are actually blind users who use computers and that you need to worry about the problem. But once you sort of get that far with knowing that you should be doing the right thing, doing the right thing has been quite difficult in terms of debugging it with each browser, with each screen reader combination. What should I do? Can I use AJAX? Can I not use AJAX? Am I doomed to writing static HTML if I have to support a blind user? And so one of our goals here is to sort of dispel some of those myths with respect to you should not use technology X if you want blind users to use it, and rather turn it around and sort of leverage those same technologies that make the web dynamic for the mainstream user and make it work just as well for the user with special needs. And now that we have this huge level of awareness with respect to web developers wanting to do the right thing, can we then give the web developers the right tools so that that time that you have to put into it gets leveraged to the maximum? We'll take questions, and I'm sort of breaking my goal of not talking, so I'll shut up.
I don't mean to dominate the questions. What's a good guideline resource for accessibility users interface?
I really would answer that question differently. So I sort of think of accessibility as just a special case of usability. And a lot of times there are guidelines written, and you can look at guidelines But you know your application best. And just as you design your application to be usable based on what you are trying to do, I think the same applies for the speech user, for the low vision user. And what I personally like to see is a lot of innovation as opposed to simply adhering to believing. So you can always adhere to guidelines and they're sort of necessary conditions. They're not really sufficient. You know your application the best. You know your user the best. The goal is to sort of experiment a lot and discover things that work, because I don't believe all the guidelines that need to be discovered and written down have been written down yet.
Perhaps putting out feedback from the users.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? So the question is, what do you do to sort of iterate rapidly, get user feedback, and then move back? The way Charles and I have been doing this is, over the web, distribute code over the web, open source it, get users to reuse it early, get feedback from early adopters via mechanisms like Google Groups or whatever else your favorite online mechanism is, and then loop back rapidly and continue to iterate on the code. So that actually applies to all of this library. In fact, though we described this thing to you as a library, it did not start as a library. The library was actually derived by first writing enhancements for about 4 major Google applications: Google Reader, Google Search, Google Scholar, and Google News. And then we sort of looped back and extracted the library out of it. And as we do more, that's actually what we are doing, and that's actually where we would like to take the community as well. So from all the questions you're asking, you clearly understand the problem very well. So you shouldn't sort of wait for guidelines for somebody to tell you what to do, but play with the library, use it, and you'll probably discover things that we've missed, and we can always add it back in.
Yes.
So Raman and Charles, I'm very impressed with your usability, your advances in usability, but I do have one concern, and that is that it seems fairly fragile what you've done, because you depend upon knowledge of the DOM that's being built. And if Google changes the format of the pages, or if any author of the page changes the structure, then you have to do this all over again.
Yes. So you bring up a very good point. So basically, the world we live in today, unfortunately, is that HTML and JavaScript and the DOM is being used as a very low-level assembly language for the web. That's not the world I would have designed, but that's the world we have. So how do you code in the face of that situation? The best way I know to do that in terms of doing good software is, when you have fragility like that, isolate the fragility in a very small component so that it does not permeate the code base. So if you notice in the thing that we built, all of that dependence on the shape of the DOM is in that one small XML file. It's not anywhere else. Also, if you look at it, let's say we do 100 of these, okay? And let's say a year from now, 10 of them break. 5 of them nobody is using and nobody therefore notices. And 5 are being used. Guess which one will get fixed? The 5 that are being used will get fixed. And so it sort of has this interesting problem of, you have now pushed out the fragility to the leaves. So the web is basically not a set of 6 applications or 8. The web is thousands and thousands of applications. Every website is an application. And over time, what you've then done is you've isolated that fragility into very small pockets. So I did this about 10 years ago now. Feels like a long time. 1998, I started doing this in the Emacs Speak world. And everybody looked at it and said, this is way fragile. It'll work because you are depending on the shape of the website. The first one I did this for was actually Yahoo Maps in 1998. And Yahoo Maps came online, and it was this wonderful thing, right? You could get textual directions. but you had to sort of hunt for those 4 fields to type the thing in, and then you had to click submit, and then you got this busy page, and then you had to go hunt it out. Enlist basically wrote the same XPath hack. Basically prompt the user for the start and end location, make up a URL, submit it, get the results back, pull out an XPath, and speak the right thing. And everybody looked at it and said, this is bogus. It's completely dependent on that website, and it will break. There are two things to notice with 10 years of experience. One, a sophisticated website, it costs that website a lot more to rearrange their DOM than it does you as an open source hacker to change one XPath. So in fact, those things don't change. And the other thing is that there are 2 halves I told you, right? One is the URL params that you sort of fill in, and the other is the shape of the DOM. In 10 years of use, the shape of that Yahoo Maps DOM has probably changed about 6 times. The query parameters have not changed, and today we think of that as a REST API. So today that's what all web APIs are founded on. So this is, you bring up a good question, but in the context of how web applications are done, this has 0 impedance mismatch, so it just works. And it's sort of, so things that get used get fixed and get robust over time. Things that nobody uses fall down, and it's like a tree falling in a forest with nobody around, you don't hear it.
Just a quick plug. So I've subtly or not so subtly put up a page that tells you how you can get your own Google-AxsJAX shirt. So you'll notice that we're wearing very stylish Google t-shirts right now. They have the Google Braille design on front and the AccessJacks logo on the back. So if we can get the camera on me for a minute.
See? Charles even does modeling.
Is it race?
I'll model it too.
Yeah. So yes, if you write any AccessJacks script and it's good, and you just post it to the Google Accessible Groups list, send it to us, and we'll look at it, and we'll send you a T-shirt.
So a short explanation of the logo. Charles and I conceptualized it over a healthy Google breakfast, drew it on a napkin, and a graphics artist drew it for us. It's Web 2.0 is basically powered by AJAX. So that Web 2.0 has been styled to look like a car. And so if you have a running car, you can't stop the car, change in that context for accessibility and special needs. The enhancements also need to come by that same distribution mechanism for it to keep pace. If what you're relying on is some piece of shrink-wrap software that you got that sort of knew how Yahoo Maps looked last week or how Gmail looked last week, a year from now it's going to be clearly broken. In fact, it will be way more broken with respect to fragility that Bob pointed out than what we are doing here. Because here, what we have is we've isolated the fragility that is specific to a particular application into that piece, and we can rev that independently without doing a fresh release. So the magic here is that the Google-AxsJAX project code base is on Subversion. A consequence of it being on Subversion is that everything has an HTTP URL. So as Charles and I change the code and check it in, our end users don't even know that something changed. They just works better. And if you think about it, that's how all the Google applications that run on the web work, right? You don't download something every Monday morning to see what we've done. It just works.
Yes.
I have a technical question. Is there a browser capability through the user's agent to tell the web page if accessibility is turned on the user's browser?
No.
So I could browse out the accessibility JS file.
Right. Unfortunately, there isn't such a thing. That would be a nice thing to have.
Can we ask the browser vendors to support it?
So I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, the thing is, so now speaking not as as a developer, I would love to have that, right?
In the user's agent, they would add
Yes.
just the CPU
No,
the version. It'd be nice if they would also add accessibility.
I understand. No, so that's what I'm saying. As a web developer, as somebody who writes web applications, I would like to have that. As an end user who is blind, I hesitate about that from a privacy standpoint. So this is why I think a better solution is for sites, for a website to sort of have user preferences where a user can opt in for a particular type of interaction. So notice that now you've subtly changed the equation. You have changed it from saying, you are blind, I will always give you this, versus you are allowing the user to say what you want. And on a given day, you might not be willing or prepared to look at your monitor even though you can see, and you might go pick that feature and get the right interaction. So my preference would be to go that route where it's under user control as opposed to something like a browser sort of advertising to the world that you're deaf or you're blind or whatever.
Still with user opting in, still it doesn't totally protect privacy.
But at least you are making the choice. You are making the choice and it's under your control. And the thing is, it should be capability based, not disability based. So it should not, the preference you are setting shouldn't be saying I am blind or I am deaf. The preference you are setting should be I want you to talk to me, or I want you to show me captions. It should not be I want you to talk to me because I cannot see, because all you are asking for is for the thing to talk intelligently. You're not asking for, So, yes? Sorry?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's sort of a more complex answer. It would, as a hacker, it would be an easy thing to say the browser should just sniff the user's machine and send all that up in the header. I'm sort of very hesitant to go that route.
And we can even show it to you in action on Reader.
So this is Google Reader. This is
Click
all
here for
integrated.
ARIA Enhanced Google Reader. Geeky 904. Cool Tools 3.
And so now, Bob, returning to your fragility question, now that the script is actually integrated into the Reader product base, code base, we basically have regression unit tests that make sure that as the shape of the DOM changes, we catch those in unit testing and go fix the script. So.
Life make pet peep Google site John official Google blog 18.
Okay, so let's say I want to read that. I can open it.
Articles loaded.
So Jim, notice that it said articles loaded, and I'm pointing at Jim specifically because I want to highlight the fact that we can actually make the screen reader say things without actually putting it on the screen, which is sort of a cute hack.
5:10 p.m. 3 hours ago. In their own words, political videos meet Google speech-to-text technology from if.
So you can do that.
Star added.
And it'll even tell you if you've added a star, taken a star away. And by the way, all of these keyboard bindings are just part of Google Reader by default. And all we've done is we've watched for events, and when the event happens, we use the AccessJacks library to speak the appropriate thing.
So basically, in an application, as I said, you need to do three things. You need to pick the content to speak. You need to give the user a keyboard means of moving among things. And then as he moves, you need to sort of format what you're going to speak properly. In the case of Reader, Google Reader is actually a power user app. It's completely keyboard driven. You can also use the mouse if you like, but it's a power user would just use this with the keyboard, and it's very, very it's a very efficient user interface. So what we did was to basically augment the user interaction with additional handlers that produce the right spoken feedback. So basically, the way we are doing our work is that the AccessJacks work we've done has been integrated into Reader and Books, but there are a number of other products that we have enhancements for that are in early prototype. If you go to the AccessJacks website, you will see the early ones that we have, and that does include Gmail. It works very fluently with Gmail using the same navigation that Charles showed you. So you can use HJKL or the arrow keys to browse through your folders and threads. You can chat. All of that works. And basically, as these things get robust, as we get happier with the user interaction, they get integrated over time. So Gmail, yes, it is there in the prototype set. So if you go to the Google-AxsJAX project site, there is a page there called the Showcase that sort of has links to all the things that run, and you can go play with it.
And you can.
Unread. J. Kirkland. Hendricks bookmark page window is bad. %, E2%, 80%, 80%, C2%.
So you can do that.
Starred.
So yeah, the same thing works.
So Raman, when will we see your work on a cell phone?
When are you going to sell me a phone?
iPhone?
iPhone, you phone, we phone,
Your voice keeps saying percent.
Yeah, that's actually a minor problem of the TTS. I'm not escaping all of the characters properly. That's my bug on the Firefox end, but that's one of the things I'm working on fixing.
But I really like the quality of the text-to-speech that Apple shipped on Leopard by default. It's a very, very good engine. It's very nice. So if you actually spend a little more time formatting information, you can make it sound really, really good.
So is there technical diversity amongst speech API that may work in one platform?
So again, that is something we are abstracting for you through the AccessJacks layer. So remember, so there are so how does this work, right? The user who needs this probably has a screen reader of some kind. If you're a web developer, you're probably using a self-voicing browser like Firefox to do your testing. But the end user probably already has a screen reader that he's using. The screen reader probably came with a text-to-speech engine that it talks to, right? In the past, for a web developer, the problem has been, how do you sort of talk to that screen reader and get it to say something? The only way of doing it was to sort of, put things on the screen and sort of go try it with the screen reader to see what it said. What we are giving you is JavaScript calls where you get abstracted from all of that. So you, as a web developer, are at a much higher level. So you're not talking to the... So yeah, the platform specificity about how each TTS engine works is being handled by somebody else for you.
Yes. So we have a showcase on the main AccessJacks homepage. So that showcase lists all the currently available AccessJacks scripts.
So many of them are prototypes for Google applications that as they become robust, get integrated, and some of them are for external ones. So the Jawbreaker game, for instance, another of my favorites is the XKCD comic. You want to show XKCD?
Yeah.
So the XKCD comic is very interesting. So Randall came and gave a talk here at Google, and during his talk he said something about blind hackers. So then we had to go
%00.
make XKCD
Sandwich
talk.
transcript. A man is sitting on a couch talking to another man. They are both stick figures. First man, make me a sandwich. Second man, what? Make it yourself. First man, sudo make me a sandwich. Second man, okay comment. Proper user policy apparently means Simon says.
So now there's something interesting. So there's something interesting happening here. So if you think of a comic like XKCD, part of the fun when you can see the cartoon is to look at the stick figures, see that little caption under it, and interpret it for yourself. There is a site that is separate from XKCD where volunteers go in and type up transcripts to help the comic robot search engines. Now, those transcripts are typed into that other site. They are actually verified by the comic author, in this case Randall, and then they go in. Now, you could say, for accessibility reasons, for blind users to appreciate it, Randall's site should just show that transcript. That would be sort of bogus because it would spoil the comic for anybody who can see. So you could then say, well, if you're a blind user, you go to the site, you look at the comic, then you go to that other site, and then you look at that transcript, and then you can understand it. How often did I do that? Never, right? Because I was too lazy, right? So the lazy programmer's answer is to make the computer do that work. And so that's what that AccessJacks enhancement did. It's actually a mashup. So mashups don't have to be just visual. A mashup is about bringing content on the web from two different places into a single user experience. And in this case, we brought together the XKCD comic and the transcript for that particular episode into a single auditory user experience, and that's what you heard.
Okay, so anything else, or? Yes.
If there is not video verification, I guess there are links for accessibility purpose where you could skip to content or something like that, right? So it would be best for the website developers to actually include such invisible text which could describe just like an alt text for instance. So basically would probably
Yeah, you could do that, but then let's say Randall gets 10 million hits a day, Okay, I don't know how many he gets, but let's say he gets 10 million hits a day. And out of that, 100 users cannot see. So poor Randall probably pays for the bytes that he serves, right? So there are design choices. The thing is, the web is a very flexible environment. And yes, so doing an invisible link for say 2 words is one thing. Doing an invisible link for say 200 words and then giving all the 10 million users all of those 200 words that they never see is probably not a good idea. Now on the other hand, if you sort of say, well, do a mouse hover over and then you see the transcript and everybody likes it, then that's a good idea. So you should sort of have that ability to do it in many, many ways. And so
And I think the other key point to remember here is that we were able to do this without getting help from either Randall or from the Ono Robot site that does the text transcripts. This is something that as a third party you could just step in and do it through AccessJacks, and that's very empowering that you can do that for someone.
So because the thing is, so after you do this and you show it to say the Ono guys or Randall, say, wow, this is wonderful, right? But versus if you sort of say, if you had done that and if you had taken the transcript and you had put that on your site, then you would have all the blind users come and read your comic, and you'll sort of probably get a long yawn and say, yeah, maybe when I get time I'll do it. So it's a very empowering sort of way. So this is how the rest of the web works, right? If you don't like, so the old Unix joke is, get out of the way or I'll turn you, get out of my way or I'll turn you into a shell script, right? So it's on the web you can basically go in and program it yourself and give it to everybody else and your friends and take it from there.
So any other questions or? Okay, well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everybody.